Performance Evaluations, a skill building refresher for managers and supervisors, presented by our sponsor, Heffernan. We're super happy you could join us today. My name is Michelle Wilcox, and I will be your moderator. I will also be monitoring questions you may have during the session, but before we open up the session, let's review a couple of key items. All of the webinar materials we discuss can be found at the URL currently showing on your screen. I'll be sharing this URL in a follow-up email, so don't feel like you need to write it down right now. If you have trouble with your internet connection during the webinar, we recommend leaving the presentation and logging back in. We do not control the audio on your devices. So if you have audio difficulties, try adjusting the volume settings on your device. And if a telephone line goes down during the call, hang up and call back again to the same number. If all lines go dead, watch the on-screen questions box for an alternative call-in number. Feel free to ask questions or provide feedback by using the questions box during the webinar. If you are using a tablet, you may need to tap on the screen for the options bar to appear, and then you can select the appropriate option. We may not respond immediately. We will try to work your questions into the Q&A at the end of the presentation. If we can't get to your comment or question during the session, we will be online afterwards to respond, or we may follow up in an email if we run completely out of time. You might also email us at moderator@aspenrmg.com for up to 48 hours after the webinar. This will be a 1-hour presentation. Questions and comments, again, are going to be taken at the end during the Q&A. But as they come up, feel free to send them to the questions box and I'll bring them up at the end. Lastly, we have a number of upcoming webinars covering a variety of topics, including those listed at the Heffernan webinar website. With that, let's begin. Today, our presenter is Dr. Steve Albrecht, is one of the country's best-known experts on workplace violence, facility security, and high-risk employee behaviors. In 1994, he wrote Ticking Time Bombs, one of the first business books on workplace violence. His firm specializes in management and employee training, HR consulting, and employee coaching. He and his partners also provide threat assessments, site security surveys, and employee coaching. He holds a doctoral degree in business administration, an MA in security management, BS in psychology, and a BA in English. He's a board certified in HR, security management, employee coaching, and threat assessment. He has written 27 books on business, leadership, security, and criminal justice subjects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're doing well where you are. I will pull this up and we will get rolling. How we look, Michelle? Seeing everyone okay?
Looks great.
Great. Thanks to the good folks at Heffernan and also Aspen Risk Management. I've had a long time relationship with Aspen, probably going back 20 years here with Steve Thompson and Kathy Marks. And we continue to work together to this day, which is great. I'm based in San Diego. Hope you're doing well where you are. When we look at the concept of performance evaluations, my work in this area really came as a result of a lot of the coaching that I was doing for high-risk employee behaviors. And so as Michelle suggested, I started off in 1992 as a workplace violence guy, wrote the first book, the Ticking Bombs book. And then from that, I started working a lot with the organizations, public and private, about employee behavior, obviously, the most concerning kind of employee behavior. But obviously, not everybody and every situation in the workplace is life or death. Sometimes it's just performance. Sometimes it's just behavior. Sometimes it's get to work on time. Sometimes it is finish your work with the quality that we're looking for. When I got involved in employee coaching, I went back to grad school and I went through a number of coaching cohorts and programs, Fielding Graduate Institute and places like that. We focused a lot on performance improvement, but what I found in my work that a lot of it was behavior improvement. So you may have, as a manager or supervisor, some sense of a PIP, performance improvement plan, but I oftentimes think about the value of the BIP, or the behavior improvement plan. You may have people that are really good at their job technically, but not good people in terms of their social skills, of their interactions with customers, coworkers, clients, vendors, and other people. You may have people that are really nice folks, but don't work very hard in terms of their performance, and their skills could use an update. So some of those things are training interventions, some of them are coaching interventions, but the way that we keep track in business, obviously in an usual annual basis, is through the performance evaluation process. And so in my work, I have seen a lot of organizations that really do well with this. I see organizations that don't do it at all, which is always a head scratcher to me, that they don't get involved in the performance evaluation process because they say things like, well, you know, the employees are topped out, they can't promote to the next level, or we don't do this because, you know, at some point in time, HR decided it wasn't valuable, excuse me, or there was a sense that the employees didn't like the forms, didn't like the discussion with their bosses, and vice versa. The bosses didn't like the forms and or having these hard and necessary conversations with their employees. So I've been looking at this subject for a long time. As a writer of books, I have included in the last couple of books that I wrote, I did a book on coaching and a book on human resources, and it's a big part of the conversation in those books about the value of performance evaluations. So if you look at this, even just a couple of 3 years ago, 1,000-person survey done by WorkHuman, 49% only, that's my parentheses there, only 49% of organizations in this 1,000-employee survey here give annual or semi-annual performance evaluations, which to me is a head scratcher. If we look at that phrase in blue, which I say all the time to managers and supervisors in training classes like this, or face-to-face, or when I'm talking to them about coaching skills, if the employee that works for you is surprised by a below standard evaluation, then we have not been good managers and supervisors. We have failed. We have not used coaching meetings to support and guide the employee every step of the way. Excuse me, you cannot micromanage people into compliance, but then again, you cannot also hope or wish. That's not a good strategy for them to figure out or guess or know what is supposed to be done in the organization to your projects and deadlines and the quality of work that you're looking for. So when I think about the performance evaluation process, it is the final step, the collection of the employee's skills and sometimes deficiencies and things that they do well, but could also use some work on in other areas for the year or the semi-annual in a perfect world. And I will talk about the prevalence issue with performance evaluations in my perfect world. We don't live in that, but in my perfect world, we would do evals more than once a year. And I'll talk about the methodology that I used when I worked for the city of San Diego as a supervisor. And when you look at the evaluation process, it is a document that trails the employee's career, at least for the rating period, maybe once a year, depending on when your HR has the guidelines about how to keep evaluations, how long they keep them for. But it's also a historical, legal, guiding document for the employee's time in your organization. It helps and supports the decisions we make about promotions. It helps and supports the decisions we make about discipline or termination. It helps and supports fairness and no bias or any other kind of issues around unfair treatment or disparate treatment of the employee in your organization. It's also a guidebook for you and the employee for the rest of the year to say, here's some things that need work. Here's some things that you need to improve upon. And even every employee, even your shining stars or your rising stars, will be in this category as well. Everybody can benefit from some feedback. And when I think about coaching as a process, and I think about performance evaluation meetings as a process, I think about the word feedback as the most effective phrase that we think about for this that is not constructive criticism. And constructive criticism makes people defensive. And the phrase, the language of constructive criticism just makes people automatically defensive, that they're not going to like what you have to say. So if you can start to shift your vocabulary towards the concept of giving people feedback, and it's easier to digest, it's a little more semantically positive, and also it's easy for you to do on an ongoing basis, which is what coaching is all about, and which is the accumulation of the performance evaluation report is your coaching manual for the rest of the year. And so I sometimes feel like organizations don't give it the attention it needs to because they get busy and they get tired, and sometimes they come around in a time of the year when we have budgets or it's the end of the year or holidays or whatever, and this doesn't serve the employee well. When we don't do evaluations, the employees sometimes do not know, even intuitively, what your perspective is about how well they are doing. And everybody wants to know about what their value is to the organization, and also what they need to improve upon, whether they admit it or not, is something we have to focus on. So I have a lot to talk about in this subject. Thanks for being with me here. One of my side focus areas as a consultant, most of my work in government is, or most of my work as a consultant is in government, municipal government. I've been doing municipal government stuff for a really long time in California and everywhere else. But when I do a lot of stuff with utilities and things like that. But one of the side issues that I've been working in is libraries, and that came from my security work and the people that come into libraries that have significant behavioral issues, homelessness, mental health, drug and alcohol. And so I have been the go-to guy for library security in the United States since about 2000. And so I've been to hundreds of libraries, and so I've written 2 books on library security, but my publisher came to me, which is Bloomsbury, and said, can you do some stuff on leadership? And I said, sure. And so the first book on the left there is the Library's Leader's Guide to Human Resources. And in that book, I covered a lot of stuff about performance evaluation. Excuse me. If you look at if that book as the macro, and then the book on the right is the Library Leader's Guide to Employee Coaching as a micro. It's a step down in terms of the focus to the one-on-ones with the employee. There's a lot of discussion in that book about performance evaluation as well. So I'm not telling you this to buy my books. I'm saying it to say there is a lot of overlap in the human resources process, and your HR will tell you that, and a lot of overlap to coaching and performance improvement and behavior improvement when it comes to employee success, and that is curated and collected by the performance evaluation process. One of the issues that I think we face is some of you in your experience in multiple organizations may have had a favorite form that you use during the performance evaluation discussion, and maybe it's not as good as the one that you're at right now, or the one that you have right now is quite good and is a reasonable model for how you should do this. And that's one of the conversations I have from a consultant's perspective. I say, send me your forms. Let me look at them with my own set of eyes as to how I believe they capture whether or not this employee is above standard, at standard, or below standard, those 3 categories in terms of performance or behavior. Do we have a separate form that addresses managers and supervisors and above in terms of leadership characteristics and qualities that we're looking for? Do we like the form that we're using? So think about that in our discussion here. Do you feel like the form that is currently in play and in place in your organization is sufficient, or can you use a little fine tuning? Sometimes we get stuck with something that we don't necessarily like as a leadership group, as managers and supervisors, but we just don't have the courage with a capital C to come together and say to HR or to our senior bosses, look, this thing needs some work. And again, in my perfect world, you would get together as a management team, as a leadership team with your colleagues and say, let's do some fine tuning, let's do some improvement on this form, and then ask HR for their support to make those changes. So we're going to talk about how performance evaluation works from the top down. And for me, one of the values of thinking about this is to get early data and early information in place so that makes it easier to do. One of the things we're going to talk about is called a coaching file, which is not NOT, not a secondary personnel file for the employee. So the HR people, don't think we're keeping separate personnel files, but it is a collection of the employee's accomplishments and or coaching conversations that you have had with them during the rating period. The value of the coaching file, it is a file that the employee can look at anytime. It's not secret, it's not under lock and key in your desk and kept away from them. They can look at it anytime. And also we encourage them to add to the coaching file by saying, hey boss, here is something I went to as a class, or here's something I did online, or I just finished my degree, or here's a project that I finished that maybe you did or did not know about. So that when we go and do the performance evaluation, we don't do it from what have you done for me lately, which is called the recency error, or that we don't have knowledge of things that the employee did that were quite substantial and useful because we just didn't document them. So one of the things we're going to talk about is the value of a coaching file that you keep, that the employee can look at. So don't put any derogatory comments in the thing on a Post-it note inside there, but all your employees should know that the coaching file is where you will base some, much, or a lot of your thoughts and crafting the language for the performance evaluation, because you're looking at it from a historical reference perspective. The second thing we'll talk about is that sometimes employees can really benefit their own success in the organization, especially those that want to promote, with a me file. And a me file, M-E, a me file is, here's all the cool stuff I've done during the rating period. Here's a certificate for a program. Here's a letter or an email I got from a taxpayer or a client. Here's something that we did a community project where we, did a 10K or picked up trash or whatever it was that was helpful in our community, stuff that maybe you don't know or recognize as a supervisor because you weren't there. But the me file is a way for employees to say, look, here's some stuff that I did, boss, that maybe is not in my coaching file that you could know about. All of these things help us when it comes to crafting the performance evaluation in a way that is fair, because we're saying, look, I'm looking at evidence, not just guessing what the employee may or may not have done. And we all know that the recency error is, what have you done for me lately? Did you rescue some nuns and orphans from, getting hit by a bus in the crosswalk 2 days ago? Or did you burn down the facility, with an accidental, salmon in the microwave 2 months ago? When we think about the recency error, sometimes as human beings, we remember really good or really bad. That's about it. The value of the coaching file that you keep and the value of the me file that the employee keeps is you can fill in those gaps. Third piece up here is significant, that we want to focus our language for performance evaluation on fairness. We want to use behaviors instead of labels. And this is probably the biggest thing that new supervisors struggle with. You're always late is not a reasonable piece of language for a performance evaluation. It's not a reasonable piece of language for a coaching conversation. When you're late Monday 15 minutes and Tuesday 20 minutes and Wednesday you didn't call in at all, those are specific behaviors. So you've got a lousy attitude is not reasonable for a performance evaluation. Your attitude when talking with our customers or clients is sarcastic, and sometimes you cut people off or whatever it happens to be, is much more specific. So if you take things from our time here today, besides the coaching file and the me file, think about your use of behavior-based language rather than label-based language to better craft the performance evaluation. Last thing we'll talk about, which is interesting to me from the coaching meeting standpoint, is employee reactions. And I've had people cry in coaching meetings and evaluation meetings because they are really upset. They are fearful, anxious, and male and female, really upset about the results of the discussion. I've had people just sit there like a statue. I've had people argue with me every single thing. We will talk about all of those approaches. And if I could say something as a preparatory tool for you, especially if you've not written a lot of these in your supervisor or management career, get a phrase book. Go to Amazon and get an employee appraisal, performance evaluation phrase book. That's what they're called. And there's a lot of them out there. The American Management Association, AMACOM, has put out one for decades, which has been very popular, but there's a lot of them. I have one sitting on my desk a foot away from me, which I'm going to give to a guy for a meeting I have later this week. The phrase book gives you a cheat sheet, so to speak, a way to craft performance evaluation language connected to the specific issues you want to talk about: safety, attendance, quality of work, deadlines, etc. So a phrase book. When you look at performance evaluations, we are fraught with legal peril these days, and as HR always likes to tell us, that we have to be really careful about the language we use and how we treat employees and things like that. I'm cognizant of all those things: bias, discriminatory, retaliatory language, being overly judgmental. The biggest thing for me is, do we hold each employee that works for us accountable for their performance and accountable for their behavior? Do they keep their promises about what they're going to do? Quality of work, deadlines, things like that. Do they show up on time, ready to work, on time and with their equipment and ready to go? Things like that we measure every employee. Then we get away from issues about gender or bias or race or anything like that. Second one, we'll talk about some of the things here that you may have heard about in performance evaluations. The recency error we discussed, the halo effect, everybody looks great. The middle grade, everybody gets standard, because I don't want to write above standard language because it's too much to have to prove what they did positively. And more accurately, I don't want to write below standard evals because then I have to create a performance improvement plan for those employees. Grade inflation, which is everybody gets higher than they deserve. Sameness, everybody gets the same because I don't want to do the work. And so everybody, good, bad, or indifferent, gets the same scores, not great. Fuzzy language like be better or work harder, those things aren't useful. Punishment phrases like, or you're fired, or you're out of here, or you better get with the program or else, stuff like that is just not useful. And then the last one is kind of interesting to me, which is unwitnessed work. It is possible in some types of jobs, especially I think about blue collar jobs, somebody drives a forklift in the warehouse and you are in charge of a lot of people that do all kinds of things in the warehouse, but you have never seen this employee actually drive the forklift, then you can't evaluate them for that. So it is okay as a supervisor to write the phrase not observed. It is okay as a supervisor manager to say, I've not witnessed this. And this keeps us out of trouble when it comes to liability, to say, well, you know, I assume this guy knew how to drive a forklift, and then, you know, some accident happens, and then find out he was not actually certified or licensed to do so. So it is okay to either say not observed, or more accurately, ask the employee to demonstrate the behavior, use the software, operate the forklift, do something that's task oriented. You can say, yes, I've seen this employee do this. And I have seen, especially in public sector organizations, managers or supervisors give somebody a grade or an evaluation score for something that they've not actually seen them do. That's some dangerous territory in terms of liability. And we talked about this, where the performance evaluation document is not just something that gets signed by everybody and shoved into a file and then filed away with HR. It should serve as an ongoing coaching tool for you for the rest of the year. And then the last one for me is really significant, because I talk a lot in my books and in my work, especially with managers and supervisors who want to help their employees promote, about succession planning, and that is via mentorship. So you may be in a position in your organization where you are thinking about retirement, or maybe you're thinking about promotion. And you say, who is going to take over this team, this department, my group, when I retire or leave? Now, some people say, so what, I don't care. But other people say, who is it that I'm thinking about in terms of my legacy, and who is going to take over when I go to the next level, or another organization, or whatever happens to be. Good organizations don't just say, well, you know, the department head is going to retire, and so the number 2 is going to take over, because the number 2 may not want that position or may not be qualified for it. So you can certainly use performance evaluations as a tool for mentorship and succession planning. Succession planning for me is not just about promotion, but it's about the pipeline. It's about the talent pool. It's about creating future leaders. It's about creating leaders that may not move into your exact role, but maybe move into other roles in your organization. It's a way for us to fairly identify, with fairness attached to it, fairly identify the best candidates for positions. It's not based on favoritism or any other reason. It's a way to help those potential candidates get the skills they need in the time span for the mentorship, meaning they may need 6 to 8 months or a year to improve certain things that they need help on. And one of the things I help managers and supervisors, although it's not my expertise, is with finance. And so one of the most popular courses I used to teach for the American Management Association, they're the oldest training organization on the planet, they've been around since like 1927, is finance for non-financial managers. That was the most popular, continues to be the most popular course that they have. I talk to a lot of people that have technical skills, or IT skills, or facility skills, or sales, marketing, whatever, but may not feel as comfortable as a leader with budgets and projections and economic reports and looking at the health of the business via the financials. And that's where those types of things come into play. The other part succession planning does, especially, and this may have happened to you, especially for people we want to promote, is can we put them into positions where they can take over for a day or a week while you're on vacation or you're going and doing something else? Can you put them into leadership roles early to get their feet wet? And then the last one is, can we use coaching as a part of mentorship to develop every employee, but especially those employees who told us that they want to promote? There's a book I talk about and use a lot in my work. I reference this book because I think it connects to a lot of things I do from an HR standpoint. The book is called Crucial Conversations. This book was created by consultants and Patterson, Grenny, McMillan, and Switzler. It's a huge bestseller. You can get it on Amazon. What they decided was, in their research, that 80 to 90% of conversations we have with people are normal, routine, casual, and easy. We do fine. 10%, 20% of those conversations do not go well because they are, by definition, crucial. And they define crucial conversations as having high stakes. So a coaching meeting could have high stakes. A performance evaluation meeting could have high stakes. Strong emotions, anger, tear, frustrations, anxiety, emotions run strong in those meetings. And then the last one, different opinions as to what to do. And in a coaching conversation, all three of these variables could be in play to make it crucial, and a performance evaluation conversation as well. So you can see their stuff online. A lot of people teach this as consultants, Crucial Conversations. You can see their videos that these guys put together on YouTube. Good stuff. If you don't know the concept, take a look at it, because a lot of stuff that we do that involves talking to other people in the organization are definitely crucial conversations. You can have them personally in your own life and also professionally as well. So many times when I'm going through the concept of performance evaluation, I just think about all the values of the why. We reward good work. We match the job requirements, job duties, and job descriptions to what the actual employee is actually doing. Are they working within class and scope? Are they doing the course and scope of their duties? We identify skill gaps where they need training. Maybe they've been hiding the fact that they don't know how to use the software, or maybe there's some piece of their work that they're very uncomfortable with. We could use some training to get them back up to speed. We can use it to make decisions about promotions, but also about probation periods. The employees are approaching a probation period, and do we use the probation period eval to make a decision that yes, they go forward, or no, they do not? Certainly use it as a coaching tool, certainly use it as a promotions and selection tool, but we can also use it as a planning tool. Do we need to hire more people? Do we need different skill sets to perform these jobs where we only have one person? We could use 3. And then we certainly use it to measure not only the personal goals of that employee, but your goals as well in terms of your own supervisory and management skills, and the goals of the organization, especially, and this is a critical part, as it attaches to the strategic plan. I always think about the strategic plan as a collection of activities that you may play a significant part in, and your particular department, and your people may play a significant part in that as well. Vision, mission statement, what we believe, the strategic plan. We use performance evaluations to say, directly and indirectly, verbally and to ourselves, to the employee and to ourselves and to our peers and to HR, is this employee functioning within the goals of the strategic plan? Is there movement in my department that captures what this employee does in terms of knowledge, skills, and abilities? Do they follow policies and procedures? I'm an English major, so this is the first and only time you're ever going to see a Venn diagram from me. This intersection of the knowledge, skills, and abilities, the KSAs, connected to our strategic plan. Is this employee in my department? Is this employee and collection of employees in my department? Are these people doing what is necessary to support what is going on in the strategic plan? From the right-hand side, does the employee follow policies and procedures and rules and guidelines about how to work effectively with other human beings? Do they demonstrate positive behaviors not only in their approach to each other, but approach to our clients, customers, vendors, etc.? So this goes back to the idea that sometimes people have really good technical skills, but not such good people skills. One of the things I talk about a lot in my work is social intelligence. Social intelligence is your ability to read the room and say or do the right thing based on who's in the room. My dad, Carl Albrecht, wrote a big book about this many years ago, huge bestseller, because people yearn for a really accurate definition of social intelligence. Is more than just being nice. It's more than just being kind to people. It's more than just saying the right thing in the right situation. It is reading the room and saying or doing the right thing in the room that you're in with the people that are around you. Successful people with good social intelligence know how to do this. And then one of the things you can look at in terms of the measurement process of performance evaluations and also connected to the strategic plan is, are we getting what we're paying for? We get all these IQ points when they come walking in the door. We harness them all together, and we aim for the best results every single day. Are we getting what we're paying for from this employee? Their actual performance versus their expected performance, meaning, is there a gap? It's training, it's motivation, it's lack of confidence, it's burnout. What things do we see with the employee that there's a gap between what we are paying them to do and what they're actually doing? And I'm hip to the idea about burnout and job stress and presenteeism and all these things that we see, especially in my work in human resources. One of the things you pay attention to is, how do you help people stay motivated if they have a repetitive job? How do you help people stay motivated if their job is transactional and they talk to people over the phone or face-to-face in a transactional way all day long? How do you help people that cannot move to the next level in the organization because of either educational or training limitations or experience limitations? You know, they don't have enough time on the job, and they're frustrated about the fact they're not being paid more or giving more to do. Can you be somewhat creative in how you rotate their job duties and job assignments and keep within their comfort zone, but give them things that challenge them and make them feel more connected to your team, your department? So there's a radio station that everybody listens to. You're listening to it all the time. What's in it for me? WIIFM. What's in it for me? Why am I doing this? Why am I attending this meeting? Why am I attending this training? Why am I going over to here to do this? What's the value of this conversation with these people? Why? What's in it for me? And employees certainly have that same perspective about performance evaluations, performance discussions, not only coaching, but also the form itself, the formalized meeting itself. When I think about the meeting, one of the most disturbing things that I see supervisors do is they hand the eval, which they have written, to the employee and say, just give this a look, sign it, and put it back on my desk, and then they move on. There is no meeting. I mean, even the best, greatest employee you've ever had in the history of employees deserves praise and discussion about what they do well, but everybody else deserves a conversation with you about this. So I don't know if it's lazy or it's lack of confidence about supporting what they have written on the document, or they don't feel comfortable talking to an employee that they gave low scores to, or they don't feel comfortable talking to the employee because their relationship is not that great. But to say, sign this and put it back in my box, in my inbox is ridiculous. Everybody deserves a conversation about this. So when we look at the discussion about this, again, no kidding, it is a crucial conversation. People have qualms about your scores and what that means to them in terms of their future, or do they get a step increase, things like that. So it lets employees know where they stand. It tells them not just be better, but specifically in the document that you have crafted, what they need to improve. It's performance, it's deadlines, it's quality of work, it's attendance, it's appearance, it's interactions with customers and clients and coworkers, it's social skills, it's tech skills, whatever it is that you think they need to improve upon is crafted in such a way that they get what they're supposed to do. For those that want to advance, it helps them set their own personal and professional educational goals about what they need, certifications, training programs, things that they need to advance in the organization. If they want to promote, you can also create a pathway for them, not only in the coaching discussions, but in the performance evaluation about what they need to do to move to the next level. You know, you're a water agency, you need to be certified in this particular water quality issue. This is what you should do for the next year. I can help you go to these conferences, meetings, classes, certification programs, et cetera. And then the last one, we use performance evaluations, especially when they're positive, as praise, as telling people the good things that they're doing on behalf of the organization. And everybody has this sense, whether they want to say it out loud, that they enjoy being praised and valued for what they do. I mean, if you say to somebody, hey, you know, we're having a birthday cake for you in the break room, they go, no, I don't make a big deal about my birthday. They're secretly pleased, even if they say they aren't. And I mean, try this at home in your personal life. Hey, let's, you know, I don't want to do anything for my birthday, and you go, okay, and then you don't, then your spouse or partner is furious, right? So when people say they don't make a big deal about what I have done, make a big deal about what they have done. We catch people doing good things on behalf of the organization. It does a lot, not only to help their sense of self and morale, but also says to other people, look what we do here for people that work hard and do good things on our behalf. We take care of our folks that do that. In my work, especially for coaching, I talk a lot about the big seven. And then the last one, the big 7+1 would be the PIP, the BIP, not the PIP, the behavior improvement plan. So workplace behavior improved by behavior improvement plan. The behavior improvement plan is about sarcasm and about idea killing during meetings and about harshness to coworkers or other employees. It's about rudeness. It's about gossiping. It's about being dismissive of other people's ideas and their work in staff meetings that embarrasses them. Stuff like that is a behavior issue. Stop doing it. But the other seven here are the things we typically focus on in the performance evaluation document. Attendance, right? Do they get here on time? Do they manage their breaks and lunches appropriately if they're hourly? Do they manage their sick leave and things if they're an employee, that especially hourly employees? Do they follow policies and procedures? You cannot smoke in the dynamite factory, right? Do they follow policies and procedures about the basic things, safety, security, information security, IT security? Do they follow policies and procedures about not any situations involving racial or sexual or gender harassment, et cetera? Their attitude, which is, again, it's not just a platitude word. Attitude is about the impact on the business. Do they have an attitude which is demonstrated and clear to all positive? Do they have an attitude that suggests cooperation and collaboration? Do they have an attitude that is people first and client customer first and supportive of not only the outside customers but the inside customers as well? Do they avoid conflicts? Do they solve conflicts on their own? Are they somebody who creates a lot of drama or not? Do they work in teams? Can they meet team goals? Do they meet team deadlines? Is the quality of their work connected to the overall sense of the team, meaning that they don't let somebody else just do all the work and get all the credit, but they actually support what everybody's doing? Are they fair inside team processes? Do they have internal service skills, meaning they connect well with other teammates, other departments, other employees, and help, and never say that phrase, well, that's not my job description, you can do it yourself. And do they have external service skills, meaning they focus on the outward customer, the person that pays our salary or bills, public or private sector? Do they focus on taxpayer, ratepayer, customer, client, vendor relationships to the degree that we're seeing positive interactions there? And then the work performance piece is a big one. There's a lot of stuff there. There's the quality of the work, the deadlines of their work. Do they take initiative? And one of the ones that kind of is built into a lot of these, maybe it's attitude, maybe it's service skills, maybe it's performance, is do they keep their promises about work that has been assigned to them? Deadlines is a big thing for supervisors. Attendance is a big thing for supervisors. When the employee says, I'll have that for you tomorrow, and they don't have it for you tomorrow, is that captured in the performance evaluation as not keeping their promises? Do they take on responsibilities and meet those deadlines? When you delegate things to them, do they accept delegation as reasonable and appropriate for their level? Do they do the things we ask them to do? And then the last one, just to reiterate, my experience has been that sometimes people use the PIP, performance improvement plan, instead of the BIP, behavior improvement plan. If it is behavior based, it has to do with social skills and interaction and sarcasm and rudeness and how we interact with each other, that we hurt the team or we hurt our client or customer or taxpayer relationships. It has to be addressed through a behavior improvement plan. Let's talk about things that kind of make the eval process difficult. I have seen, and this is sort of a cultural thing, kind of an HR culture thing. I have seen people with 5-point scales in organization, and the HR says, well, nobody ever gets a 5. I'm like, well, why? Well, then because they're not perfect. Well, then let's have a 4-point scale. Well, then no one get a 4. That doesn't make sense to me. It's stupid. The other part I see is the decimal point. Well, this person's a 4.2 out of 5. I'm like, okay. And this person's a 4.8 out of 5. I'm like, okay, what's the difference in 0.6? Well, I mean, that stuff doesn't make sense to me either. In my world, I think when we use numbers, it's complex to the employee, because when they compare things with each other, which they do, right? Even if we tell them not to, these are confidential conversations they share with each other all the time. No one knows what a 4.2 is compared to a 4.8. The other thing is the categories and the anchors and the measurements need to have a very specific language, not, follows attendance policy. That's too vague. Employee comes to work on time, prepared with all, equipment and safety equipment, and is ready to do work at the appointed time that, we're supposed to. Stuff like that, which is much more specific. And then the categories, there can be sometimes just way too many things. What we're trying to get is, in my estimation anyway, is the employee working at standard, which is not a punishment, right? We're happy with standard employees. They're working to job description, job duties. Or above standard, meaning they exceed the expectations of the organization. And we can document that. And then the third one, below standard, is they are not doing the work that we hired them to do. Above standard, we want explanation. Below standard, we want a plan. Again, staying away from label-based language like lousy attitude or poor attendance, things that we need to document more specifically. Behavior-based language. Stop being rude to our taxpayers over the phone. Entitled employees who expect higher scores because they've been there a long time. Sometimes this is the fault of the actual document. Bosses with no courage to write or speak the truth, afraid of being challenged by the employee. Guess what? They can rebut it. They can write a rebuttal, but that does not mean, unless you've made some sort of significant error, you have them, doing something they didn't do or vice versa, you don't have to change your evaluation. Grade inflation, unequal treatment, out of date range, meaning we're evaluating them for stuff they did 3 years ago. Typically, it's 1 year between the rating period. Evals that are not done regularly, there's no meeting, just hand it in and sign it. There's no enforcement of the performance improvement or the behavior improvement plan, no follow-up. It's not seen as a trailing historical work plan with coaching attached to it. These are all the things I have seen. So again, back to the the coaching file that you keep and the me file that the employee keeps. The me file is those things that you may not have seen or heard about that the employee can collect and give to you prior to the rating period. If they come in after you've already written the eval and go, look, here's all the cool stuff I've done during the rating period, too late. So you say to your employees, look, if there's anything I need to know, capture this in some sort of written form in a file and give it to me with enough time so I can write your eval. And this is a way for you not to have a memory like an elephant. They can give you examples of the good things that they have done. You can add those in as you see fit and as they qualify into their performance evaluation. So the coaching file for you is a collection of those coaching conversations that you recap in an email or that your notes, things that you specifically addressed with them about performance or behavior. It's not a secondary personnel file. It's not a discipline file. Are they in compliance with the 7 factors, attendance, work performance, et cetera, policies and procedures during the rating period? When I worked for the city of San Diego, I had 15 people working for me. I evaluated everybody on the anniversary date of hire, which was a pain. Some people got hired in June and some people got hired in February and some people got hired in September, et cetera. So I was writing evals all year long. And then the city said, okay, we're going to do evals at the end of the year, December. And I go, okay, so now I have to write 15 in December and I'm busy and I don't give them the attention they need because there's a lot of them, which I tried to do as best I could, but there's a lot. Then the city said, we are going to do quarterly evaluations. Instead of once a year, we're doing them 4 times a year. And all the managers and supervisors howled unmercifully. Oh my God, that's too much work. It turned out to be the best way possible. And I actually support that. And in my perfect world, we would do evaluations more than just once a year. Why do you say? Because you don't have to have memory like an elephant, and all you're evaluating, especially in the four per year process, is that quarter, that 3 or 4 month span of time what the employee did. It makes it easier to write them. They're faster, and you can do coaching conversations 4 times a year instead of once a year. And so for employees that dread the process, it gets a little more accountability onto them. It also has you pay better attention to what is going on because you're looking at a shorter span of time. I don't see people doing them quarterly, but in my perfect world, that was a great way to do it because it got more activity and energy around performance or behavior improvement because it was sooner rather than saying, here's a list of all the things that you've done 364 days out of the year. Let's talk about it 1 day a year. We look at performance evaluations and say what is good about them. It is connected to job duties and job descriptions. It is standardized and regular across the organization, meaning that we're not coming up with a new form every 5 minutes. We use the same one year after year with changes. It is connected to success in the organization. It's standardized, meaning that we do the same form for all employees or the same form for employees and another form that's leadership or managership oriented for managers and supervisors. It's not biased, excuse me, subjective, vague, random. We use performance-based or behavior-based language, not labels. It's written by managers and supervisors who actually seen the employee do those things. It is a written, this is kind of my HR wrap up here at the bottom. A written, it's not something we just scratch on a Post-it note. It is written on a form. It is factual as best as we know, and the employee can rebut if we made mistakes, which we can correct, but we don't change our opinion. It is timely, meaning we do it in such a way that the organization benefits from the employee's changes in their performance or behavior. We discuss it with them. It's confidential, and it is historical. It goes into their file, and as such, we create it with some care. We create it using as much knowledge, observations, but also the collection of things we have used during the coaching meeting time frame, the coaching file, with anything that they have given us with their me file. Now, if the employees don't have a me file and don't bring you anything that's different than what you observed or what you saw or what you have talked about with them or coaching discussions you have, then you write the evaluation. But for those employees who want to promote or who want to move up in the organization or get into different roles or responsibilities that come with promotions and mentorship and things like that, the me file makes it easier for you to say this employee is above standard as opposed to just at standard. Now, just at standard is fine, but when we're looking at this from the mentorship and promotion standpoint, that's where we find our rising stars. Talked about these a little bit. The halo effect is everybody's great. I don't want to be mean. They all look great to me. A little halo on their head like angels. They all get the same score. Overly lenient for our friends and overly harsh for the people we don't like. This is the struggle and I have seen this many times in organizations where, especially for brand new supervisors who are promoted over somebody that doesn't like them. So you have a team of people, several of the folks go for a promotion, they go through the board, they sit through the interview, et cetera. Somebody else gets the job, and then they stop working for that person because they don't like them. Or their buddy says, great, my pal is now in charge. I don't have to work very hard for he or she. I can do what I want. And then we get overly lenient scores as well. Vanilla scores or middle grades, that's what supervisors and managers do not have the courage with a capital C to give people accurate scores, accurate descriptions of what they do or did not do. The recency error, again, you can only remember what this person did positively or negatively, probably back about 3 months. The buddy system, excuse me, the buddy system, which is my buddy is my friend here. I'm going to make sure that I grease the skids for this person to get promoted. I'm going to write evaluations that are not actually accurate. Label-based language instead of behavior or performance-based language. You always, you never, sweeping generalizations that are difficult for this person to make changes about. And then punishment phrases. I mean, you can say, we need to see changes in these specific areas, or you may be subject to future discipline if that's true. But we don't use things like, you know, you're out of here, or you know, I'm coming after you, or stuff like that I've seen people put in there. And then biases for other reasons is a significant concern as well. Gender, skin color, sexual orientation. It is critical that we evaluate people on job duties and job descriptions. It's critical that we evaluate people on performance and behavior for no other reasons. Fairness is a big part of this. It is the professional supervisor's approach to this is fairness. One of the steps here that you do not see, and I could add it in, but I don't know exactly where it goes, is excuses. And the excuses part could start really early. Well, boss, you know, one of the my dog ate my homework, and there was traffic. The excuse part comes up a lot in these steps here, and it comes up typically when we're talking about things where we want the employee to make changes, especially step number 5. What I want you to think about for the excuse part is put a fence around the actual excuse and say, I hear what you're saying. Let's look at some solutions. Well, you know, it's really hard for me to get to work on time because, you know, I have a new child in daycare. And you go, I hear what you're saying. Let's talk about some solutions. Because you can hit the tennis ball or the pickleball back and forth over and again. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Yes, I do. And you can get into a looping argument about excuses and rationalizations and denial and all that stuff. Just say, I hear what you're saying. Let's focus on the solutions. Well, it's really hard to get here on time. There's a lot of traffic. I live far away. Okay, I hear what you're saying. Let's focus on the solutions. Let's focus on what we can do, what you can do, right? And I call that putting a fence around it, because you can get into specific arguments back and forth, ping pong table, you know, pickleball, tennis court, back and forth over the specific excuse, or just say, I hear what you're saying. Let's talk about what we need to do or you can do as a solution. Plan for the meeting, open the meeting, define the measurements of the performance evaluation. Start with an overview, move to the specific language, discuss the business impact of any problem areas, performance or behavior. Talk about what you like that the employee does. Talk about their changes, the plans, what training they may need, deadlines, what their goals are, what your goals are. Talk about if you know, a little bit of detail about the connection to the strategic plan, and then wrap up the meeting. One of the things to do is give the employee a copy of their evaluation and say, look, don't just sign this and give it back to me. Use this, read it, think about it, because I'm going to be talking with you about this as a coaching tool. The other part of this, and this is one of those no perfect solution issues, is when do you give the document to the employee to look at? Some supervisors give it to them the day of the meeting or the hour of the meeting, and then the whole time the employee's trying to read it and listen to you talk. If you give it to them 2 weeks ahead, that's probably too early, but maybe a day or two before, say, look, this is a confidential document. Please take a look at it. I will be talking to you about this. Now, if it's low scores, they're going to be upset, and you know, they may make a face at you as you walk down the hall. But they need time to look at it and review it, because if you sort of spring it on them, it is harder for them to evaluate what you're trying to say and look at that and figure out their own response or explanations to what you have said. So there's sort of a sweet spot for that, which is look at this prior to the meeting so that you can jot down your own questions. You can make notes about what you want explanations about. You can talk about me if you want to rebut, you know, talk to me if you want to rebut certain things, but we give it to them a little bit in advance. Now, it's easy to say, don't share this with other employees. They all do it anyway. So for the excuses, we talked about this. Put a fence around it and say, I hear what you're saying. That does sound challenging. Let's talk about what you might want to do differently. Let's talk about some potential solutions or approaches that I can sign off of that you can start doing right away. Tears. I don't end the meeting. I'm not being hard-hearted. I do not end the meeting for tears because sometimes for some employees, male and female, crying means stop the meeting because it makes my boss uncomfortable. And what I say is, I understand you're emotional. That's not my function. I want to give you a couple moments here to collect yourself. We'll take a little break. If you want to use the restroom or gather yourself, let's come back to the discussion. Because if we end the meeting after tears, what people figure out is, like little kids, crying gets, mom and dad to leave me alone. Third one, imitation of a statue. They don't say anything. They don't engage on anything. Now, there's a couple reasons for that. One may be language barriers with the employee, their command of English. The other may be that they're fearful, that they think this is about to be fired document. That's not how we do things. We use progressive discipline. We use the opportunity for people to correct through coaching, training, etc. So you may have to explain to them, especially if it's not good scores in their evaluation, that it's okay for them to ask questions. It's okay for them to engage. The anger and constant disagreement and the arguing over each point are really kind of similar problems. And what I try to say, and sometimes this is where the employee gets really, really defensive, is simply this. I understand you have strong feelings about this. I get it. This can be an emotional discussion. I understand you want to explain your perspective and point of view. Let me go through this all the way. I will turn over to you. Because if you argue each point, the meeting will take 4 hours. Say, let me talk this all the way through so you get my perspective and you can take notes, but I want you to hold off on interrupting or arguing with me about stuff until I've had a chance to explain this all the way through, and then I will turn it over to you. Overly agreeable is sort of a weird little trap, because I'm like, yes, boss, you're right. I should, you really, that's, I've been working on that. And they will say anything to get out of the meeting. I mean, I've had that in coaching, which is, well, I must be the best coach on the planet. This person complied with everything. And then they leave and they make no changes. The reason they complied is to get out of the room with you. They're uncomfortable. And if they say to themselves, yes, I'll just say everything, yes to everything my boss asked me to do, with no real, and this is the hard part, no real sense of wanting to change, then it's a waste. So I actually call them out on this, and I say, I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you are looking at what I have crafted here, and I'm glad that you think it's important. I want you to think about how you're going to make the changes, because I am not just going to give this to you and wander off. This is going to be something that we're going to come back to in terms of coaching, and I'm going to use it as a measure going forward in terms of performance or behavior. The insubordinate thing can be possible as well. This is people who maybe want to get fired, or this is people who don't like you, or this is people who are super frustrated in their positions and are really, really difficult during the meeting. If you feel uncomfortable and you want a coworker, a peer boss, or HR in there, you can do that as well. What we want, we don't always get, but what we want is someone who is appreciative and cooperative for your efforts, and appreciative and cooperative of the fact that they contributed to their successful performance evaluation by doing good work and doing things within their job description, and that they have helped you recognize that through things like the me file. So I got a lot of lawyer pals, and we talk about this stuff, and the road to litigation for performance evaluation is miscommunication, misinterpretation. You better or else. One more problem out of you and you're fired, buddy. I mean, that kind of stuff just leads to litigation. So we don't threaten people. We don't misinform people about how our discipline process works. What we do is we tell people the path to success, and we ask them to follow it. And we tell them if there are consequences to not doing those things, that is part of it as well, but we don't threaten them with it. Third one, mismanagement, inconsistent supervision, especially micromanaging or missing managers, no clear record of the issues, dates, times, examples. You were late in February is not the same as, we have three weeks in February where you didn't come to work one single time. Employee is not clear on the performance or behavior issues to be changed. Do you understand when we're talking about this, these are performance changes or behavior changes I expect you to make immediately. I expect you to follow our policy about harassment or attendance or whatever it is immediately. Management has not provided training and or the time to improve. Not just be better, but I've set you up for a class starting tomorrow. Clear evidence by the supervisor of bias or harassment or discrimination or retaliation. And again, the evaluation is not a collection of sins punished during one meeting on one day. It is not, N-O-T. Speaking of not neat, here is Dave Monks. David's a friend of mine in San Diego for Law Group. He talks about the NEAT approach, notice of the problem to the employee. explanation of how to improve, how we are going to help you improve, or you must improve in these particular areas, specifically assistance, training, coaching, support to improve, and time to improve. If we do all these things and do not see the improvement, then we can move to progressive discipline. Good stuff here from Dave. Let them read it or meet first. I say let them read it first. And then there's the car accident dilemma. They hit something in the company vehicle or the city truck in February, and we're doing the evaluation in December. They haven't had any accidents since then. Do we put them below standard on driving? I would say yes, with an explanation. You did get in the accident. We haven't had any since then. Great, but we can't say, well, they only got an accident. It was 10 months ago. We're not going to address it. So I say if it happened during the rating period, mark them below standard for that particular issue, but say they have improved since then. Do they know how to grieve it? Do they know how to write a rebuttal? Do they know that the rebuttal does not mean, and you may need to explain this to them, that you have to change your suggestions, your approach, your grades? Should you use the performance evaluation by a previous supervisor? The answer is sort of. You can look at it as a guideline, but don't use it as a template or a rubber stamp. Use your own perspective, because the supervisor prior to you may have had a good or bad or some sort of hidden agenda relationship with the employee, which could cloud your thinking. Use it as a guide, but if theirs completely different than yours and you believe yours to be correct, then stick with it. Do your rising stars, your shining stars need improvement? A rising star is someone who wants to promote. A shining star is somebody who may not necessarily want to promote, but is doing good work on your behalf. The answer is yes, they can improve in little ways compared to the employee who does not, has a lot of issues, but praise is certainly important. And then the last one is, how do we prove success in the performance evaluation process? The answer is, do we see changes in performance or behavior? Do we see gradual changes? Do we see immediate changes? Do we see immediate policy compliance? Do we see them following deadlines, delegation, performance improves, behavior improves, social interactions improve, contact with clients and customers improves? Do we see observable changes? And if we don't, we go back to coaching. So coaching files that you keep, not a secondary personnel file, a me file the employee has, which collects the things that they have done during the rating period that they want you to look at, the behaviors that you observed, time and training to correct, and coaching to help them correct. Areas for continuous performance improvement, either performance or behavior. And then we have a behavioral contract that says, what do we need to keep doing? Let's talk about it in the performance evaluation meeting because it's working. Keep doing this, employee. What should you stop doing, employee? Because it's a waste of time, money, and effort. And what should you start doing? SMART goals you know about: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, trackable. And again, the performance evaluation discussion should be not just one meeting, one day, but a two-way engagement. We give and get feedback. We give them praise. We use coaching skills. We use coaching meetings, and we collect things during the documentation part during the rating period, so we can look at it and say, this is what we have seen the employee do, either our own coaching file or their me file. So thanks everybody for the time and attention. Michelle, back over to you for any questions, and thanks everybody.
Thank you. So we don't have any questions at the moment, but we appreciate all of you for attending today's webinar presented by Heffernan. We will send an information by email with instructions on how to access a copy of the presentation on our website. Thank you, Dr. Albrecht, for your time and expertise today. We hope all the attendees found today's webinar to be a valuable use of your time. Be sure to join us on June 23rd for the OSHA Knocking on Your Door webinar. Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Michelle.